the college was very pleasant. I was given an advanced placement in an English class because my grades were pretty good, or I wouldn't have gotten into Cornell. And I was given an assignment to write a constructive fictional essay or poem to test my wits. So I sat down and I copied the famous Evangeline. I'm sure you all had that. I paraphrased it into my own words, my own English, and I very happily gave it to my professor and sat down waiting to hear what he had to say. And he said, "Oh, what's your ambition?" I said, "Well, I have two. I was thinking of becoming a writer or becoming a doctor." So he said, "You better become a doctor." This is true. At that point, I changed to pre-med.
Wow, really?
Well, I said I wanted to become either a writer or a doctor. And he told me very forcefully to become a doctor. So pre-med was pretty easy. I did quite well. I ended up 5 Beta Kappa. But you are not quite aware that after the end of my first year came Pearl Harbor. And with Pearl Harbor, I, of course, volunteered in the Army, and we had what was called ASTP. Everything was the Army Specialized Training Program. These were pre-medical students that were saved from combat by the Army because they needed doctors. They knew they needed doctors, and if they used all the men up on the front lines, there'd be no doctors left to take care of them. And we had our own insignia. It was a Grecian urn with a flame on it, and we used to call it the flaming bedpan. As we walked around, we were dressed private first class in uniform, and I did very well. I said I got 5 Beta Kappa, and I got an early admission to Cornell Medical School. I only spent 2.5 10% Jews, and I unfortunately got into that. Cornell University was anti-Semitic, and for that reason I've never given money to them. And Cornell Medical School was equally anti-Semitic. But they tolerated. There's a difference between trying to crush us or tolerating us. They tolerated us and let us compete. And I began my first research there. And I had a wonderful mentor. I still remember his name. It's Tom Almy, who was a clinical professor who became director of medicine at Dartmouth Medical School. He became the president of Dartmouth Medical School after that Cornell. And he was my mentor and encouraged me in my first research. I did 2 research problems under his aegis. And when I finished medical school, I finished quite well. I was second highest in my class, and I won the Borden Research Award. My name is still on the plaque at Cornell if you go look. And I won, for some reason, I'll never know, the Obstetrics and Gynecology Award. I don't know how I won that one, but they gave it to me. At the honorary award, the equivalent of 5 Beta Kappa, they did not give me. They restricted to only one Jewish person who was the top man in the class. Even though I was eligible for it, I didn't get it. And then came the problem of getting into an internship. During my work at Cornell, I had gotten to do some of the side research projects too, and especially in cardiology. We had a wonderful man named Harry Gold, who was extremely charismatic and earth shaker, who did work on a drug called digitalis, which is not used anymore. It was first found in England and was the most potent heart stimulant that was ever made. And I worked under his clinic, and he became very comfortable with me. We did things together. And when I applied for internship, we go through a guidance counselor. The guidance counselor told me, "Oh, you've got very good grades. You're doing pretty well. Apply to Mount Sinai and apply to Cornell's New York Hospital." Mount Sinai at that time had a program. They only took one person from each class, the top number 1 Jew, and I was number 2, so I did not get into Mount Sinai. And New York Hospital was extremely anti-Semitic. They had filled their Jewish quota. I didn't get there. And all of a sudden, I was astonished. I was out of a job. I didn't have an internship. So I go to my friend Harry Gold, and I said, "Tim, what am I going to do? I'm stuck." He said, "Don't worry." He picked up the phone, right in front of me, picked the phone, called Beth Israel Hospital, New York, said a couple words, said, "Come with me." He took me in the car, drove me down to Beth Israel. I had my interview, acceptance, bingo.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, you need luck. Whatever it is in this world, you need luck. So I began my internship by the good grace of God. And Beth Israel was an interesting place in those days. The original hospital is still there. It had 10 floors. It was the only kosher hospital in New York. Mount Sinai was the first Jewish hospital. They had to have Jewish hospitals because the Gentile hospitals did not take Jews on the staff. If you were a Jewish doctor, you couldn't work in the hospital. You couldn't have been a patient to the hospital. So they did.
How times change.
What's that?
How times change.
Well, times have changed. Now the hospitals have Jewish hospitals have Gentile directors as sons of bitches. So Mount Sinai was the German hospital. The first immigrants to New York were the Germans, as you know, and the first successful ones. So they built this wonderful hospital, but still not around. But it was, oddly enough, the Germans were prejudiced against the Jewish Ashkenazis. They did not like the Poles. They thought them as second grade. So what did they do? The Ashkenazis built their own hospital at Beth Israel. Now, this is true. Beth Israel was kosher. Mount Sinai was not kosher. So open up. Used to say,
What are you telling her?
They stuck me in a room which meant for one person was 2 of us together. We were squeezed together in this tiny room. And hours of work, you worked all day, you worked all night. You got a half day off a week.
Milton, you're only 20 years old at this point. Get on with it.
No, the rest they know. They don't know this part. The rest they live through. I don't have to tell
Oh, you
them.
mean we're not going to go to the part where you meet mom and
But
we're not going to go to the part where you meet mom?
I'm going to.
You haven't been down to Maryland yet. You haven't been down to Maryland yet.
So, an intern got $25 a month, room and board and laundry. That was it.
It's good benefits.
I would, on my half day off, I would run into New York, which was just a subway right away. And my friend and I, Arthur Winter, I don't know if any people remember old Arthur Winter. We were both dateless, and Arthur's mother arranged a blind date for both of us. One for him, and one for me.
Oh, I didn't know it was his mother.
Yeah, and who was the blind date for me?
Wow.
Well,
They said, if you don't like her, we can't do anything better.
That's the story they told you, Grandma.
Did Arthur end up marrying his blind date?
That first date was
No?
first date was very interesting.
How did you know Arthur's mother?
Yeah, how did they
I
know?
didn't, but she knew somebody I was in college with. You know, college, if you know people in college, there's always somebody who needs a date.
Yeah.
I needed a date.
Wow.
So that first date was very interesting. We ended up in Lila's house, and Arthur and I were very raucous and started to jump around.
Curl
We
in the
started
bed, Phil.
to do a trampoline on her father's bed and crunch! We broke the bed frame.
Grandpa!
This happened. Your mother can vouch. So
See,
I
there's
can
more
vouch,
words.
vouch for it too. I was in the other room, remember?
yeah.
I thought you went to the
So
boxing
we
match.
tiptoed out of the house and we figured Lila can somehow solve the problem with her father in her own way. Well,
You never liked you, I don't know why.
then the next date I had with Lila was on my own terms, not with Arthur. And I wanted to treat her to something special. And I invited her out to dinner and to a boxing match. I thought the boxing match was great stuff. So we went to a steakhouse and Lila ate one roll and left the steak on the plate, and I was on $25 and you know, well, we had to leave the steak behind. And we went to a boxing match, which I thought would amuse her. Actually, it was very exciting because the referee, who was a famous boxer named Benny Leonard, you'll have to go back and remember Benny Leonard.
No, I think it was Olympics.
Benny Leonard dropped dead in the ring in front of us.
What?
Wow, wasn't this exciting?
Oh my God.
So she thought I was a bore. And we had difficulties after that.
There's no way to
But I was still doing research. I never stopped doing research. And I was doing something, when you do research, you need illustrations. And in school, in college, in medical school, you had professor illustrators. But there it was in Beth Israel, they had nothing. So we were lucky to get our meals. But I knew Lila was an artist. That's one thing she posted about. So I needed some slides done. I called her up, and she very kindly, gently did the slides for me, which I published in my paper. And we started dating again on more equitable, satisfactory terms.
How much time had passed?
That was about 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Internship was just 13 months. It was exactly 13 months. At the end of 13 months, I was discharged from the hospital, inducted into the United States Army as a first lieutenant. Doctors had to be Army doctors. There was a difference. You just didn't practice medicine. You had to do the Army regulations, and had to do the paperwork, and know all the folderol that goes into it. And there was a training program in the heart of Texas, one of the hellholes of the world. So I had my orders in hand, and I called Lila for the very last date. I think this is the last time we see one another. And we went to a lovely inn. In Westchester.
On the Hutchinson River Highway. Yeah. Everybody went there.
And we're eating dinner there, and I look across, the inn was still there. I look across the room, and I saw my old biochemistry professor. His name was Summerson. Summerson was famous. I don't know if Carol will remember, there was something called the Summerson-Klett photocalorimeter. Maybe that's before it. Before they had the present gadgets, they used this old calorimeter to.
Is that from Orly?